Shalom. We're on the first shiur for Shnat Tafshin and as we did last week, Parashat Haazinu, we want to deal now with this current Parashat Haazinu, but with Parashat Vezot Haberacha. Usually we omit dealing with Vezot Haberacha, and it's mamash chaval, because we have the beautiful bracha of Moshe Rabbeinu to his tribes, to the Shvatim, and we usually, if at all, discuss it on Simchas Torah. But as a parasha, we never have the opportunity to discuss at length Vezot Haberacha, and now we'll do it in the 40 minutes that we have. So I would like today to compare Vezot Haberacha to the bracha of Yaacov. I'm not the first one to do it. As we know, Chazal said, Vezot Haberacha asher berach Moshe, that Moshe started from the very point that Yaakov ended. Meaning to say that we have two long brachot on the Torah. We have one in Bereshit Memtet at the end of Sefer Bereshit. We have one here at the end of Sefer Dvarim. Pay attention that we said very few times, we said on Sefer Dvarim, that we have a separation between the four former Sfarim and the fifth one. You remember that I many times reminded of the Maharal, based on the Gemara in Megillah, saying that Moshe said it's mipi atzmo, that Moshe has spoken Sefer Dvarim from his own mouth. And we ask the obvious question, but Moshe never said any word that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't tell him. And then we said that the difference is between the four former Chumashim that come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perspective, whereas the fifth one comes from Moshe's. Now we'll do mamash the opposite. We'll take the five chumashim of the Torah and we'll separate them not to four former chumashim, because we might say that at the end of Sefer Bamidbar, Am Yisrael is be'arvot Moav al Yarden Yericho, is mamash at the entrance to Eretz Israel after all the conquering of Sichon and Og, and you might omit Sefer Dvarim, and you have the same, you just have to say that Moshe has died, and then you can speak of Yoshua. But now we'll do the opposite. We'll take just Sefer Bereshit as a book, and we'll discuss the four other books as a separate unit. Therefore, we have the end of Sefer Bereshit with the bracha of Yaakov to his sons, and we have, on the contrary, the end of the four other Chumashim, Sefer Dvarim, with the bracha of Moshe in our parsha to the tribes. וזאת הברכה אשר ברך משה איש האלוהים את בני ישראל לפני מותו. So, לפני שאנחנו קוראים, before reading, he said something to all of them, an introduction that Hashem has come from Sinai as sunshine from Seir, and Torah tziva lanu Moshe Kehilat Yaacov, and then he starts with the bracha of each and every tribe. Okay, so we have the klal, introduction and including all of them, and we have the pratim of each and every tribe. We have the same thing with Yaakov. ויקרא יעקב אל בניו, ויאמר יאספו, but Yaakov starts with the pratim immediately after he קבצו ושמעו, listen to me, בני יעקב. So he starts with Reuven and all the shvatim, but he is a famous pasuk at the end, כל אלה שבטי ישראל 12, וזאת אשר דיבר להם אביהם, ויברך אותם איש אשר כברכתו ברך אותם. So the summing pasuk is really superfluous, because we've seen that Yaakov has blessed each one of them, and therefore Rashi, based on Chazal, says that he has not only blessing to each one of them, but he has one to all of them. And when you we know that in everything, when you organize an organization, when you have a group of people, you have the micro and you have the macro. You have to look at each one of the details, but you have to look at the macro. And Yaakov does it, Moshe does it, but in an opposite way. Yaakov starts with a pratim, with a singular, and then goes to the plural. Whereas Moshe does the opposite. He starts with introduction, speaking of all of Israel, and then he goes to the details. We have the same thing in Parashat Naso, the long Nesim that we read on Chanukah, and you know that we have 72 psukim that are really miyutarim, superfluous, because we have 6 psukim of each tribe saying how he was makriv at the first day of Akamat HaMishkan. But then we have the same thing, the Torah, after mentioning 12 times each and every tribe, they go back, the Torah goes back and says some pasuk that says, that makes all the conclusion. We have 12 kearot, we have 12 mizrakim, we have 12 like this. We have the Torah sums it up because it's very important to have each time the plural and the singular. Now let's compare the brachot one to each other. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't start with Reuven. It's clear that he starts from Yehuda. Yehuda is a leader, Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda, but he has some shinuim, changes from the bracha of Yaakov. First of all, Moshe talks to Yehuda, to Levi, okay, but he does, then he talks to Reuven, sorry. Moshe Rabbeinu starts with Reuven, then Yehuda, then Levi, but where is Shimon? According to Chazal, according to Rashi, Shimon, he is hidden in Pasuk Zayin, in the bracha of Yehuda. Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda, Shema means Shimon, and we know that nowadays the Chalukah, the separation of Eretz Israel, Shimon is hidden in the Nachala of Yehuda, in the Negev. Yehuda has a wrapping, he wraps the Nachala of Shimon, and therefore they are together. Vayomer Vezot Yehuda, Vayomar Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. It's very clear at the beginning of Sefer Shoftim. Then we have that Shimon tells Yehuda, come with me to conquer my area, and Yehuda tells Shimon, come with me to conquer my area. They are brothers, they are friends, they're going together. Okay, but anyway, Shimon is hidden at the most, and we don't find an explicit pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu blesses or curses Shimon. Okay, so another difference is Moshe never curses. Yaakov is an Av. Now we're talking about Melech and Av, Avinu Malkeinu, Im Kevanim, Im Keavadim. Yaakov is an Av. An Av can speak nicely, but sometimes he can give a shmooze to his sons, because I understand that that's his role, it's a part of the family. And Yaakov, in his speech, uses a lot of criticism against Shimon, against Levi, whereas Moshe doesn't use it. Moshe talks about the nation, and it's very bad once you're as a leader to look at one of the tribes and tell you're as a bad person. You can do it if you're his father. You cannot do it if you're his leader, his Rav or his leader, because then he'll kick himself away and leave the whole clan. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't say anything bad against any of the Shvatim. He says maybe slightly, indirectly, but he never says it's like a tochecha, whereas Yaakov is not afraid of doing it a lot. That's one difference. The second difference we've said, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't talk about Shimon. Let's go back to Reuven, to Yaakov. We have Reuven, we have Shimon v'Levi Achiv, and then we have Yehuda, okay? So it's very clear, we have Zvulun and Issachar, we have Dan and Gad, we have Asher and Naphtali, and we have Yosef and Binyamin. Okay, so we have all the tribes by Yaakov. We don't have one tribe. We don't have Shimon by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu points out much more, and that's the third difference, much more than Yaakov, the share of Yosef. Look at the bracha of Yaakov. When he talks about Yosef, he talks about at length. Ben Porat Yosef, Ben Porat Alei Ain. You have to remember that Yaakov speaks very a short time after coming to Egypt, to Mitzrayim, and Yosef is his host. He's the governor in the area. So he has to speak about what happened to him. Ben Porat Yosef, Banot Saada Leishur, as we know from Rashi, that when Yosef was going on the wall of Egypt, all the girls looked at him, he was so beautiful. וימררו ורובו ויסתמו בעלי חיצים, ותשב באיתן קשתו, ויפוזו זרועי ידיו. Okay, so till now, till the end of Pasuk Kaf Dalet, 3 psukim, Yaakov devoted to speak just about the history, how Yosef has come to Egypt, about the Mechira. What I'm saying now is that Yaakov knew about the Mechira. It's not clear from the psukim. We can give it a different interpretation, but this time I'll say as if we know Yaakov has known about the Mechira and has talked about the Mechira and spoken about the nisyonos that Yosef had in the past with Eshet Potiphar and Vateshet Beishdan Kashto. That's what Rashi says. And then he says, Me'el avicha v'yazrecha, and he gives him Birkot Tehom, Birkot Shadayim Varacha, and Birkot Avicha. So he has 2 psukim of blessing, 5 psukim at all. Now go back to the bracha of Yosef here. Here, apparently, Moshe is many years after Yosef's story in Mitzrayim. He doesn't have to speak about his Mechira, how he has come to Mitzrayim. It's not relevant anymore. But he just has 5. Yes, Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet, Tet Vav, Tet Zayin, and Yud Zayin, 5 psukim of blessing, and he enhances the bracha of Yosef. Again, he talks about Meged Shamayim Mital, Umitoom Rovetzet Tachad, Umimeget Vot Shemesh, Umimeget Geresh Erechim. He talks about earth and he talks about heaven, the same like Yaakov. Yosef has dreams that he is a governor, that יש לו את השמש והירח ו11 כוכבים משתחווים לי, but on the other hand he has all the wheat, כן, אלומים בתוך השדה, והנה קמה אלומתי וגם ניצבה, והנה תסובנה אלומותיכם ותשתחווינה לאלומתי. So Yosef is a real fulfillment of Yaakov's dream, a ladder between Shamayim and Eretz, a real fulfillment of the person who goes to Bet HaMidrash and is a big learner and just sits in Oil Hashem and learn all day. But on the other hand, when he goes out, he is the best economist in the world. He is a governor in Egypt. He is a second just to the king, and he succeeds all over. So that's Mamash Yaakov's dream, but Yaakov fulfilled it with a lot of agony, with Lavan, with Esav, whereas Yosef fulfilled it to the most. He was, because of Yosef, all of Am Yisrael was saved from the hunger. So Yosef Amar mevorechet Hashem arzo mimeged shamayim, from the blessing of the shamayim, from heaven, and teom rovetzet tachat. But we have 5 psukim of blessing, and we can give it 2 interpretations why Moshe enhances the bracha of Yosef and deals with Yosef longer than Yaakov. The first one is that he knows that he's the leader after him, Yehoshua. From Parashat Pinchas, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu comes and tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yifkod el Hashem Elokei Aruchot Ish al ha'edah, and according to Chazal, he is interested in his sons, etc. But the Kadosh Baruch Hu orders that Yoshua would be the leader. Moshe Rabbeinu, in the last parasha of Vayelech, he takes Yoshua and he samach Moshe yadav alav, and he knows that he'll be the leader after him. And the first perek of Yoshua that we'll read, that's the Haftarah of Simchat Torah, deals with the big shoes that Moshe Rabbeinu leaves to Yoshua, and Yoshua has to enter, has to wear them, and he knows about that. And that's why everybody tells him Chazak ve'ematz, and Am Yisrael tells him Kasher asinu im Moshe ken yeh imach, and if somebody doesn't listen to you and doesn't obey, he'll be killed, etc. So Moshe Rabbeinu knows that Yoshua is the next leader, and therefore he talks at length about Yosef. That's one option. But another option I would like to discuss is that Moshe has some inner linkage or connection to the figure of Yosef. And it's, sometimes it's not clear, but let's discuss it now. We know that we have three avot, three patriarchs. And we mentioned many times the Ezra Yitzchak Hutner in Pachad Yitzchak mentions it, that the three avot are not just three because there are three, but we have three stages in each time that we found something, and we need three stages. Let's say that you start with a factory or corporation. So there is like Elon Musk, okay? Now we talk about him because Netanyahu met him yesterday or 2 days ago. So when you found something, you have to be poretz derech. You have to do something that people will think that you are mad. Either you start with a startup, or you decide to make a mechonit chashmalit like Tesla, etc. Okay? And then you have a lot of bureaucracy, you have a lot of people that tell you that you lose your money, a lot of people that tell you, what are you talking about? A lot of people have tried it in the past, it never succeeded, etc. You have to be poretz derech, to decide to be devoted to the what you believe in and go with it. You have a lot of fights, you have a lot of burden on your shoulders because everybody doesn't believe in you. You have to believe in yourself. That's what Abraham does. He's a founder of monotheism. Everybody tells him you're insane. Believe in paganism. Everybody tells him wants to kill him. Nimrod, his father Terach, with a famous story about his store of avodat elelim. But Avraham Avinu believes in what he does. Not only believes, but he goes, he leaves the place. Lech lecha me'artzecha, mimolatecha, mibeit avicha, el haaretz asher areka, vayelech aloch v'nasoa nekba. He all the time moves, he all the time changes people, he all the time tries to convince others to share his dream and join him. After such a big founder, you have all the time, I would say it not nicely, but the lazy son. Not all the time he is lazy, but he is born basically to the factory, to the organization, to the corporation. He doesn't understand what his father has come through. He knows that the organization exists. He is a son of the founder, and he knows that he is very wealthy. He has come from a wealthy family, and everything runs. His father has thousands of workers. He has nothing to be worried about, just to maintain it. That's the problem of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is very lazy, so-called, meaning to say that he is not active at all. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't run. He doesn't found. If there is a quarrel and a fight with the Palestinians, so he just moves away from the wells and finds another place. He just wants to maintain living in Eretz Israel. He never leaves Eretz Israel. Everything is occurs to him. He doesn't he doesn't activate anything. His wife is even was given to him by Eliezer, the slave of Avraham. He doesn't do anything. Okay, so he sits in Eretz Israel. He doesn't have to make an aliyah. He was born here. He's a second generation tzabar that doesn't understand even the מאבק and the loss of his father, leaving the diaspora, leaving all the things that making an aliyah was involved with. And he comes to Eretz Israel, he never leaves it, and he is a part of it. And when talking about the patriarchs, we have the fathers, we have Abraham that activates and makes it monotheism, going to Eretz Israel, etc. But we have Pachad Yitzchak, we have somebody that is Yira, that sits in one place, doesn't move, and wants just to maintain, doesn't want to create anything, doesn't want to widen the borders. He just wants to sit in the borders and dwell. Then we have the third generation, and it happens in a cooperation, it happens in making aliyah, it happens in each process that the second generation doesn't understand why he is here, okay? Why he has, what does he have to do with the factory? For the second generation, it's clear that it's my father's, so I have to maintain it. For the third one, why should I be involved in the factory that is my grandfather erected? And for the immigrants to the making aliyah, the third generation says, maybe I'll come back to Berlin. Maybe I'll come back to United States. Why should I live in Eretz Israel? It's so expensive. It has so many problems. Why shouldn't I leave it and just go back to the diaspora? And then you have to do again and again to conquer the same conquerors that you have conquered by the grandfather. And therefore Yaacov has to leave Eretz Israel to Haran and come back and to win what Avraham has already won, because he's a third generation. Okay, so we have in Yiddish, Rav Hutner says, Avraham is der erster Geborener, okay? Yitzchak is der erster Geborener, because he is born into the situation, and Yaakov is der erster Falfalener. Okay, that's the three stages that we have. But we have a little bit more. We know that Yosef is, Rashi says it in Parashat Vayechi, that Yosef is considered on the one hand like a tribe, on the other hand is considered like an Av. Rashi says on the Posuk, Misham Ro'eh Even Israel. So Rashi says, he is Even, is Av, Veben. On the one hand, Yosef is considered a Ben, he is one of the tribes. On the other hand, he is the father. He is a manhig of them all. He is a leader, like we know, if you look at Sefer Bereshit, we have what Yehuda thought, what Reuven thought, but we don't have what Yosef thought. We feel that Yosef is mamash one of the main characters of Sefer Bereshit, whereas the other brothers are just, sometimes they say here and there, but they are not leaders. Even Shmuel and Shimon and Levi, when they make the revenge in Shechem, they do something, but it's just few psukim and they disappear. Yosef is a real leader, and we have Moshe as another leader. And we have to think sometimes between the difference between the three Avot and Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu is not their son. He has 4 generations after them. But why isn't he considered an Av? And Rav Soloveitchik, in one of his Semes Drashot, says that the difference between the Avot and Moshe Rabbeinu, why sometimes the Avot have some advantages that Moshe doesn't have, and what the advantages that Moshe has that the Avot didn't have. But if you think about it, if I would ask you, who are the leaders of Am Israel, you can say Avraham, you can say the whole Avot, but you'll definitely say Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu can be considered as one of the Avot on the one hand. On the other hand, he is from the coming generation. He is after the Shvatim, okay? He is a son of Amram, of Kehilat, of Levi. So he is few generation afterwards. So for sure, he is just a Nin, or even for sure he's not Av. And Yosef has the same complexity. From the one hand, he is an Av. From the other hand, he is a son. So Moshe Rabbeinu is very similar to Yosef, but more than that, they are both born בצורה דומה. They are very similar to each other. They are born, and Moshe Rabbeinu, he's expelled from his family, not because of hatred, chas v'shalom, but because of the situation. כל הבן הילוד, היאורה תשליכו וכל הבת תחיון. Moshe is thrown into the Nile, and from then on, he grows in a different area, in the Egyptian area, by Paro. Okay? Yosef, because of the Sinat Achim, at the age of 17, is expelled, he is sold out to be a slave, into slavery, and he comes to Armon Paro, the palace of Egypt, palace of Mitzrayim. Yosef becomes the second leader after the king, after Paro. Moshe Rabbeinu becomes בעצם the son, the next king, if he didn't leave his Egyptian identity and would stay, so he would be the מחליף of Paro. It's well expressed in the famous Midrash that when he was a very little baby, so Paro gave him the crown and the gold, and Moshe Rabbeinu touched the crown, and Paro was very afraid that he wants to be the successor after him. So the same thing happens with Yosef. Yosef is a Mishneh LaMelech. Paro himself appoints him, that's true, but they both are very similar. They live in a foreign culture. They get married to the daughter of the local Kohen, Osnat. She is the daughter of Potifera Kohen On, and Tzipora, the wife of Moshe, is the daughter of Yitro. Okay? They sons, both sons' names are named after the complexity of and the significance of living in a Golus. Yosef, Menashe, and Ephraim. Menashe ki nashani Elokim me'eretz oni. He talks about being expelled from Eretz Israel, being exiled out of Eretz Israel, and Ephraim ki ifrani Elokim be'eretz oni. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me fertility in a foreign country. Okay, and because of the education in a foreign country, they have problems, because when Yaacov comes to bless Menashe and Ephraim, he asks me Ele. He doesn't know the look, you know, with they dress like Egyptians, and maybe they don't have beard, they are shaved, whatever. You can depict it as ever as איך שאתם רוצים. But Moshe Rabbeinu has the same problem. His sons Gershom and Eliezer. מה זה Gershom? The same problem of being exiled from my homeland. And Eliezer, אלוקי אבי ביעזרני ויצילני מחרב פרעה. So being a foreigner in Egypt made me probable to being killed by Pharaoh, and just because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ויצילני מחרב פרעה. But they have the same end. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't zoiche to get into Eretz Israel, and where the Chumash, Sefer Dvarim, ends with his burial, ולא ידע איש את קבורתו, is buried בחוץ לארץ. Okay? לפי הפשט, he is buried בחוץ לארץ. By the way, it's בנחלת שבט גד. That's one of the reasons when Yaakov talks about God, he talks very shortly. Look, he talks about God in one posuk. God גדודי לגדנו והוא יגוד עקב. Moshe Rabbeinu speaks about God a lot. והיה ראשית לו, כי שם חלקה כמותו ויתר רשעם, צדקת השם עשה ומשפטיו עם ישראל. We don't know anything about the history of God. We don't find God throughout the Tanakh. We find even Dan, we find Shimshon, but God, we almost don't know anything about it. And maybe the reason that Moshe speaks more about God is because he's buried in his Nachala, and therefore he talks about him more. Whereas Yaakov doesn't have this to discuss God. But go back to the comparison between Yosef and Moshe Rabbeinu. They are both buried abroad. They are both buried in Chutz La'aretz. And we don't pay attention, but it's mamash, as I said, the 4 letters for him, and the first Sefer of Bereshit, and it's the same. The Sefer Bereshit ends with Yosef ordering, פקוד, יפקוד, אלוקים איתכם, ועלותם את עצמותיי מזה איתכם. Take my bones with you, because I don't want to be buried here. The same happens with Moshe. Moshe is buried abroad, in חוץ לארץ, and לעתיד לבוא כביכול, he won't be buried, because the continuation of Sefer Bereshit is the Geula from Mitzrayim, and the continuation of Sefer Dvarim is the Geula Atida. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu would mechayem etim of Moshe, and Moshe Rabbeinu would get out of his grave in Chutz La'aretz and go to Eretz Yisrael. So we have the same personalities and the same ashva'a between Moshe and Yosef. And again, it's not just the basic facts and the personal culture that they both had in a foreign country. It's more the being in the middle between, from one side, being the leaders, Moshe for sure, Noten Torah, Korea et Hayam, taking them out of Egypt. Yosef there as a mefarnes and the one that leads them into the exile to Mitzrayim. And from the other side, they are both just, Yosef tries very hardly to be one of the tribes, because they look at him like, you are the leader, you're not one of us. And we see the chashad and the suspects that they have against him. Even when Yaakov dies, there is a lot of bad blood, as we said, between them, and they lie to him, and they say lies about what Yaakov has ordered, Kehilat, in order that the gap, because the gap exists, they want to soften it. The same thing happens at the end of the Torah. The Torah speaks at length about the ma'alot of Moshe, and you really feel that there is a gap. Moshe is too high, he's too much for us. And Uisha Elokim, he has spoken to HaKadosh Baruch Hu panim el panim. Nobody would be able to do the same, and Moshe has some disadvantage because of it. Let's see the last psukim. ויבכו בני ישראל את משה בערבות מואב 30 יום. What does Rashi say? ויבכו בני ישראל. Rashi has a comparison, but not just Rashi, Ibn Ezra, Chizkuni, Paneach Raza, all the Meforshim, between the death of Moshe in this parasha, in the last psukim of the Torah, and the death of Aaron in the Parashat Chukat. Here you see Vayivku Bnei Israel, just Bnei Israel, and by Aaron we see Kol Beit Israel. Okay, so Rashi to his derech says that Aharon was Ohev Shalom, V'rodef Shalom, and he was making Shalom Bayit, and therefore all the women loved him as well. While Moshe Rabbeinu was not in Torah, he didn't deal with the Shalom Bayits, and therefore he was less ahud by Am Yisrael, and therefore when he died, just the man cried over him. But pay attention, it's very weird, and Rabbi Milubavitch in one of his siches mentions this point. Vayivku bnei Israel. It's very weird. When you talk in Hesped about somebody, you give the best things you can say about him. Sometimes you come to a Hesped, you don't know who the personality is, because you never knew that he was like that. So I would expect the Torah to speak about Moshe. We can speak highliest of the highliest, but talking about Ismaila is not Teire, ולא קם נביאות בישראל, etc. But according to Rashi and according to the Meforshim, ויבכו בני ישראל את משה, it's his disadvantage that Aaron was better than him, that Aaron had Shlom Bayit, and Aaron, people cried him more than over Moshe. Why does the Torah mention it here at the end of Moshe's life? And Rabbi Milubavitch has his own Hasidic way, but I think that it's very clear that Moshe Rabbeinu has his own biggest benefit, but his own disadvantage. When you're so high and so perfect and so close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, so it's very clear that you'll have basic and inner disadvantages that you won't be able to discuss with people because you cannot do it all. You cannot be with people, you cannot lie to people. Aharon lied in order to make peace, because Shalom Bayit means that you lie. As Chazal said, he came to a fight between one person and another and went to the second one and told him, your friend wants to make Shalom with you, he doesn't know how. It wasn't true. He went to the second one, says the first one wants to make Shalom with you. It wasn't true. But if you want to be a person of a Shalom, you do that. Moshe Rabbeinu is a person of an emes. He cannot do that. He's too perfect to do that. He cannot go down to the disadvantage. So therefore, the Torah says that with his perfection and his big Maila, know that he was perfect, but too perfect. And this being too perfect is a chisaron. That's why the Torah mentions here the Yitaron of Aharon, that he was gentler. But he could lie, he could change the truth in order to make shalom. But going back to Yosef, he has the same problem. He was too high. He was in a stage that he was the leader, the organizer of everything in Mitzrayim. Everybody bows to him. But how can he talk to his brothers like a friend of them? He cannot talk because he has financed them. He has led them into Egypt. So we find that Moshe and Yosef has the same Gural. We have has the same culture, has the same leadership from one hand, and the problem of the leadership from the one hand. And maybe that's why Moshe lengthens and talks about Yosef at length. And maybe that's why the Torah ends twice at the end of Sefer Bereshis with Yosef's tzava'ah, will, and what Am Yisrael has to do with his body. At the end of Sefer Dvorim with Moshe's will and what Am Yisrael has to do with his body. Kivyachol, Kenot Kadosh Baruch Hu here has to do with its body, and we have infinite story, both of them. We have the three avot. It's a finished story, but then we have the continuation of the next generation, and they cannot be avot because the factory is founded, and you don't have to do the bureaucracy, you don't have to cross the lines and immigrate to Eretz Israel. Your fathers have done it already. But what you have to do is to deal with a continuation to the future, with the dreams, with different things. Sometimes you have to be just a son. Sometimes you have to be a leader, and mamash like your forefathers. Sometimes you have to be like Moshe as a leader. Sometimes you have the disadvantage of being a leader. So both of the books, Bereshit and the Dvorim, ends with the same complexity of the continuity of Am Yisrael. And into Sefer Yoshua and the other Sforim of the Nach, we have the stories that has just begun and is about to go on for the future. להתראות. ברוכים תהיו.
Very interesting.
תודה.
Very nice.
להתראות, Mr. Fixer, גמר חתימה טובה to you and your wife and your whole family. להתראות.